Getting criminally trespassed by the sheriff's office, buying guns off the side of the road from randos on a Saturday morning, and arguing with FUDs on Twitter.com about firearm inspection protocol. All that and more in today's video. So a little over a week ago, the city of Houston held another one of its gun buybacks. This was the third one that the city has held. Now, if you haven't already, I did make a video on the first gun buyback. You can see that up here, wherever that is. You can go watch that video. I cover it in depth. Now, for this third gun buyback, I actually was going to attend. I figured, hey, if they're going to be giving these cheap prices in exchange for potentially priceless firearms, as you can see here from the advertisement for the event, $50 gift card for non-functioning firearm, $100 gift card for rifles or shotguns, $150 gift card for handguns, and $200 gift card for semi-automatic rifle. So I figure, hey, if I can go there and get a rifle for $100, paying people cash, they don't have to wait in a 3-hour line, and I could get a rifle that's potentially worth $1,000, $2,000, not for profit. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to make money or anything, but in order to preserve these very valuable firearms that are valuable in many senses, a historical sense, from an artistic perspective, from a functional, just having fun plinking sort of perspective. I mean, you can't avoid the fact that these are valuable guns that some of these people are giving away and they just don't know the value. Maybe it was a dead husband of theirs or something, or it was laying in the closet for 40 years, which we saw many of those cases, which we'll get into in a bit. Anyways, I show up at the park where this event is being held, and there's an officer standing at the gate of the park asking everybody who's coming in, hey, are you here for the gun buyback? You here for the gun buyback? And naturally, I have nothing to hide. I go up to the officer and I say, hey, I'm here for the gun buyback, but I'm also here to buy back the guns myself. And immediately upon hearing that, the officer told me I would be criminally trespassed if I decided to do that. I asked him if I could record him saying that to me, and he said, sure, no problem. So this is the exchange that occurred. I want to go to the gun buyback to buy back guns, which is a legal thing to do. This is public county property.
It's county property, correct.
Yes, so in public property, and I'm not violating the law, but you're saying if I try to do that, I will be banned from the property?
Yes, sir. You're going to be told to exit this park, right?
Okay.
If you refuse, you're going to be criminally trespassed. If you refuse, you're going to be detained. You can go to jail for criminal trespass.
Alrighty. Can I go and just turn around?
Oh, yes, sir, you can.
All right. And he had also informed me that other people had come and tried to do this before me earlier in the day, and that they also kicked them out and said, hey, we will criminally trespass you if you stay. Now, I checked before I went to the park. I made sure I wasn't in violation of any of the county park regulations. As you can see here, rules and regulations for county parks in Harris County, Texas. And if we scroll down to the section labeled weapons, Section 11, Weapons. The Constitution and laws of the state of Texas and those of the United States of America govern the possession of weapons within a park. So no specific regulations banning the carrying or anything relating to a weapon within the park. It's just the state of Texas, so totally good. I've got my concealed carry permit. We've got constitutional carry. I saw no signs in the park saying no carrying of firearms allowed or anything like that, so we were good on that front. Some people were trying to make an argument that this was solicitation, that, this was commercial activity or something like that, and they can regulate that within the park. And solicitation is something that is indeed listed in park regulations. Solicitations and sale of goods and services. The solicitation or sale of goods and services or the seeking of donations for a cause is prohibited unless the person receives the prior written approval of Commissioner's Court. Now, I was not engaged in the sale of a good or service. I was not soliciting for donations, so people would be giving money to me. Nor was I engaged in commercial activity. The exchange of firearms, private sales, this is not commercial activity. If you were doing commercial activity related to firearms, that would require a license, and that's under federal law. Otherwise, you'd be in violation of federal law. Private sales are allowed between people in most states in the United States, and this is something that's allowed under federal law. And again, those people are already there to basically sell their firearms, but to the police. I would just be there as another person looking at the firearms and saying, oh, this person's already going to be getting rid of this. Hey, I want to outbid effectively the police and give you cash. Maybe you don't have to wait in a line. I'd be helping these people, if anything. I'm not pestering anyone for the sale of a good or service or soliciting donations or anything like that. What's also weird is that in Section 20, the title says solicitations and sale of goods and services. But then when you go to the description of the regulation, it says the solicitation or sale of goods and services, or the seeking of donations for a cause. So is it saying solicitation is different than the sale of goods and services and seeking of donations for a cause, or is it saying it's something in addition? So I asked the officer if it's okay that I go into the park and just chill for a bit and then go right back outside. He said that's totally fine. So I go in, I chill. I ask some of the other officers about this whole thing. They say the same thing, that I would be criminally trespassed, etc. And then I wait for someone who I was planning to meet up with for this event. None other than the Texas oil and gas man himself, Tom Slocum, who may or may not have shot down the Chinese balloon that was over the continental United States. I can neither confirm nor deny. It is highly G14 classified. You may have seen him film for me before in some of the Houston area gun control videos. Anyway, he finally pulls up and he lets me know, hey, there's actually some people on the side of the road who had signs and everything saying, hey, pull over, sell your guns to us, sort of thing. So I figured, hey, if we can't do it in the park, how about we go down there and meet up with those guys, see if we can get some footage, see what's going on. And sure enough, there was about a group of 4 guys standing on the side of the road, just advertising that they were buying guns. You know, skip the line, we pay cash, licensed buyers, which I thought was an interesting sign because they're not necessarily licensed gun dealers, but they are licensed to carry, and that's a license, and it shows, hey, that you have a background check, so it's okay to sell to you, sort of thing. So, of course, in an act of defiance and in solidarity with my Pro 2A gun brothers, I decided to post up as well with my sign that I brought. Of course, I had a sign ready to go. We'll buy guns for more money. Cool. And we held up our signs on the side of the road, and sure enough, people were pulling in. Now, I will say, after looking over the pictures and videos of my sign, maybe black lettering with a brown background and it not being colored in with black was not the best idea. It did not, the contrast wasn't there to see the sign super well. So rest assured, next time I do this, I will try to get a white sign, you know, colored in black lettering, so there's a lot of contrast there so the drivers can actually see the sign. But luckily the other guys had good signs that you like stick in the ground and people could very easily see them. Now, one of the first few cars that pulled up was this very kind lady who allowed me to film this exchange. She said something at one point, which I think might have been her address or something like that, so I'm gonna cut that part out. But here's part of that exchange. So could you say that one more time? So what was the reason that you stopped by here?
My husband died and he had those guns and he brought them from Florida. His uncle had left there. And he left them at my house.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got some guns here.
100.
That's the scope? Okay. That's one for.
What's that one right there?
That's 20 to 40.
High caliber does it look like?
When you do 100 for this as well?
We got 300 before, but we thought it would be 2. You know,
These are some.
well,
This is some interesting stuff here. They all lever actions? Or there's a bolt action. So you can see there it was a more elderly woman talking about her husband dying, that he had got the guns from his brother who was from Florida or something like that. And she probably had the best collection of what we had seen that day. I mean, she had an SKS rifle, I believe 2 lever actions, bolt action gun. There was a lot of things in there, and the guys pretty much just bought them all up. Frankly, I was busy filming. I wish I got in on the action to buy one of those lever actions. I would have loved a 30-30 Marlin for $200. You know, honestly, probably could have gotten it for $100. I think she was under the impression that she was going to get $200 for a lever action from the cops, you know, one of those gift cards. But given that it's not a semi-automatic rifle, it is a lever action, they would have given her $100 for that rifle. I mean, this is a rifle that's probably worth at least $600 or so. I mean, it probably would be maybe even more than that, and someone's getting it for 200, let alone they could have probably gotten it for 100. I mean, my goodness, these are fantastic deals. And the idea that they would just be melted down by the police, no questions asked, they're just gonna melt them down. I mean, this is a gun that's got history, it's got craftsmanship, it could actually go to a home where the owner appreciates it and wants it. Maybe some people who can't afford a brand new Marlin 3030 could afford one, but they would just melt it down, and that's very unfortunate. Now, I've got more footage and stories from us buying guns on the side of the road in defiance of them kicking us from the gun buyback event, but before I get to that, if you'd like to give the video a thumbs up, it really helps us with the YouTube algorithm. Comment, share, all that good stuff, especially if you want to see more stuff like this in the future, going to these events in person, buying back the guns, saving them from destruction by the police department. And in fact, I think we might have some special guests in the future going to these events. So if you want to see more of that, like, comment, share, really helps us out. So here's some more footage from the gun buyback. Here's one of the gentlemen and a bunch of the guns that he purchased, even some of them before I got there. I mean, you can see a beautiful SKS. I believe the SKS was purchased for $270. Here's another gentleman with multiple firearms laying on the ground, a .357 Magnum revolver that he got for about $180, a Kimber 1911, and virtually all these guns were purchased between $100 and $200 or so. This revolver was purchased for about $25. And later on, someone even brought a Tommy gun. This was not something that someone brought to the event, actually intending to give it to the police for the $200 or so that they would get from it. Now, this is a reproduction Thompson submachine gun, semi-automatic, of course, and we're not dealing with Class 3 firearms here, no felonies. But the gentleman brought it back after he saw us on the side of the road and was like, hey, I have got a Tommy gun back home, semi-auto, of course. If you guys want to buy it, I'd be willing to sell it to you. And one of the guys was willing to do it, and he bought it for $450. And I looked up this particular variant on Gunbroker and seeing what they were going for. And honestly, it wasn't the most amazing deal. The prices I was seeing on Gunbroker were around $600, $700. So he got it for $450. It came with one magazine, and it looks cool, but it's a cheaper variant of the Thompson. Now, going back to the gun buyback, as you can see from the poster I was showing earlier, this was an event put on primarily by Commissioner Rodney Ellis and Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. Now, during the gun buyback, they actually held a press conference, and it was pretty amazing to see what some of these guys were saying.
Before I go into my prepared remarks, I do want to know, I had a few calls from people who were asking about whether or not Mayor and Congresswoman and Sheriff, there's statistical evidence to prove that gun buybacks work. And I made the comment, anytime there's a tragic loss of life or injury from a firearm, I always give my thoughts and prayers, and I'll continue to do that. But I don't know that I can prove that there's any statistical evidence to prove that thoughts and prayers help. But I'm going to continue to do it. I think that it's important to note that we're using every tool in the toolbox that we can think of. And if there are more tools that people can think of, we'll do it.
That's right. He just said that. He just said, I don't know if gun buybacks work statistically, but I also don't know that thoughts and prayers work statistically. But I'm going to do the thoughts and prayers anyway, even though I don't have the perfect statistical evidence to prove that they work. The difference is thoughts and prayers don't cost you anything. They don't take up police resources. You can do thoughts and prayers in the comfort of your own home, and it doesn't cost you anything. Whereas a gun buyback costs the taxpayer money, and it costs police resources that could otherwise be allocated to fighting crime and things like that, things that are more effective. This is unbelievable that he would say something so stupid. This was Commissioner Rodney Ellis, by the way. The gun buybacks have been like a pet project of his that he's been pushing this whole time. And like I mentioned in my first video about the Houston gun buyback, not everybody in Houston is on board with this. For example, the district attorney, Kim Ogg, was against this gun buyback. When it originally happened, she put out a letter, which you can almost find nowhere on the internet at this point. She put out a letter talking about how this gun buyback, the way it's being done, could potentially jeopardize future criminal cases. In fact, I'm just going to insert some clips from my previous video going over this. Dear law enforcement leader, I am writing in regard to advertisements reading, and it talks about the gun buyback program. The announcement states that Houston Police Department officers will conduct the operation in the parking lot of Wheeler Avenue. Gift cards valued from $50 to $200 will be given to persons turning in firearms with a no question asked policy by law enforcement. And it talks about how the guns will be destroyed following their testing to determine if they've been used in a crime. We all recognize the importance of getting guns off our streets and out of the hands of violent criminals in an effort to reduce violent crime. Unfortunately, because the district attorney's office was not consulted about the gun buyback program, it is imperative to inform you that this program could have the opposite impact. Under its current parameters, this program could harm public safety, impede the prosecution of violent criminals, and encourage the theft of firearms in and around Harris County. So those are some pretty bold claims. The district attorney, again, a George Soros-backed district attorney, so generally these are further left, progressive prosecutor types, is saying that this gun buyback program could actually lead to more violent crime and harm prosecutions. And it talks about the no questions asked policy, saying how it's the equivalent of anonymity and immunity for anyone who turns in a weapon under the program. But it talked about how giving the money to the people who turned in the guns that were potentially used in crimes, the DA's office has to disclose to defense attorneys in criminal cases, money that was exchanged between law enforcement and a witness, talking about how it could do irreparable harm to the prosecution and therefore to the crime victims themselves. Says the no questions asked policy could lead to more crime, incentivizing people to steal firearms from homes only to get a quick buck from the police who are paying them. She also talks about how it is possible that the program could make law enforcement agency a party to tampering with evidence. And funny enough, if you look at the crowd, you will not see District Attorney Kim Ogg among the people in the crowd here. In fact, a few days before the gun buyback, District Attorney Kim Ogg was at this event promoting gun safes. Harris County giving away free gun safes for residents. Officials said 1,000 gun safes have been purchased and will be given away on a first-come, first-served basis. You can see her saying, in Harris County, guns are being stolen out of vehicles at an alarming rate, Ogg said. Let's not make it easy for the criminals, Ogg said. Let's store guns safely in Harris County. Lock up your weapons, everyone. So she's backing this initiative with the gun safe thing, but she's not attending the gun buyback event, probably related to her original reasoning in the letter that we outlined right before this. So when Commissioner Rodney Ellis talks about these gun buybacks, if it saves one life, if it just saves one life, it'll all be worth it. Well, if this potentially compromises criminal investigations, criminal prosecutions, and the criminal gets to go free as a result of it, and this is someone who is highly violent, highly volatile, or has a murderous background or a tendency to murder, then it actually might have a counterproductive effect in leading to more killings. Now, when I originally posted my video on Twitter with my interaction with the sheriff's deputy who threatened me with criminal trespass if I went to the gun buyback events to buy back guns, it started going viral. It was getting a lot of attention. As you can see here, at the moment of filming, we've got 1.3 million impressions, almost 500,000 views on the video, over 1,600 retweets, over 7,500 likes. And I tagged a bunch of different organizations. I tagged Gun Owners of America, the National Rifle Association, the National Association for Gun Rights. I tagged Ken Paxton's office, the Attorney General of Texas, Colion Noir, a famous content creator. And funny enough, and I have to give major respect to this organization, the only one who publicly replied to this tweet was Firearms Policy Coalition, which said, happy to look into this, which you can see someone replied to it with, we sure know NRA won't. And I have to say, Firearms Policy Coalition, they DM'd me, they asked me for, email information, saying, to reach out, whatever. But just the very fact, whether there's follow-up or not, just the very fact that they replied, acknowledging this, saying that they would look into it, that means a lot, especially when they were not one of the organizations that I tagged in my original posts. So that means a lot. Later on, a few days later, I actually had Gun Owners of America also reach out to me. They even had legal counsel call me, and I had a conversation with them, which even if there's follow-up on that in the future or not, I mean, it's still greatly appreciated. It shows a lot of character when organizations like this are not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk. So I really appreciate that. And I have to be honest, I mean, I'm not a member of these organizations. I'm not a member of Gun Owners of America. I haven't contributed. Well, I think I might have contributed to Firearms Policy Coalition. I'm not sure. It might have been through some indirect means, but, I haven't directly contributed as a member or anything like that. But I've been an NRA member for well over a decade. I mean, I've been a life member of the NRA for over a decade, and I heard nothing from them. So that was disappointing, but that's changing today. I'm not being sponsored by these guys. I wish I was, frankly, maybe in the future. But I'm going to sign up for Gun Owners of America and Firearms Policy Coalition because I really do appreciate them reaching out in this instance. That's really cool that they would do that. And none of the other organizations did. So I appreciate that a lot. And I recommend you guys do it too. I mean, these are groups. It takes money to run these things. They're fighting in the courts. They're fighting in the legislature, both federal and state. They're fighting all over for your rights. So support them, especially when they support you. Now, going back to the press conference, this very important detail was also mentioned.
The other thing that I would add on top of what Commissioner Rodney Ellis said about the gift cards, please be reminded we're not taking ghost guns. We're not taking those anymore.
So there you have it, and you might have seen it in the poster as well, where it says, gun buyback, turn in your firearms to receive gift cards. No ghost guns will be accepted, in all red. Now again, if you haven't watched my video on the first Houston gun buyback, you can watch it up here somewhere, whatever. But the reason why they're not doing the ghost guns anymore is very evident based on their previous experience. One of the guys basically showed up with about 60 3D printed handguns, and he sold them to the city for about $50 a pop, which netted him over $3 grand. And although ghost guns have been put out as this menace, these dangerous things, and we got to get these ghost guns off the streets, and even though that was part of the original planning of this whole buyback in the first place, they no longer take the ghost guns because people abuse the system, and they're like, oh my God, they're just going to use this to print money, basically, and take advantage of the system. So they don't do that anymore. And that's why I think it's smart for us to also keep up our effort on the buying guns front. So if we show up and we buy back a bunch of the guns that people were going to take to the gun buyback, then we could maybe stop all of this altogether in the future. If they know that they can't go and say, oh, we got more guns than last time, you got 1,000 guns this time, 1,200 guns this time. If the number keeps going lower and lower and lower because we got more guys out there effectively treating these events like gun shows and they're just buying up whatever cool guns people are bringing in, then it'll discourage the department and the city and the county from doing events like this in the future. They're a waste of police resources. They're a waste of taxpayer dollars. I get it. Most of the money, or pretty much all the money's coming from federal tax dollars, federal funds, but that's still taxpayer dollars, even if it's not just exclusively the taxpayers of Harris County or the city of Houston. Now, there is one other thing I want to talk about, and it's not exactly totally related to the gun buyback situation, but because of the photos that I was posting about the event, it kind of brought up this conversation. And I think it's a good point of clarification because there's a lot of people out there who dibble-dabble in the gun stuff, but think they know a lot more than they actually do. You can maybe even refer to them as FUDs, potentially. But one of the photos I posted was this one. It was of me holding an SKS and looking down the bore. Now, I get it. It looks funny. I'm on the side of a road. You know, this is not something you see often. Someone's holding my sign that's saying, we'll buy guns for more money. And I've got a rifle pointed what looks like the wrong way at my face. It looks kind of ridiculous to a lot of people who aren't familiar with firearms or maybe just dibble-dabble. But as a general practice, especially with older firearms, I like to inspect the bore, make sure there's no obstructions, make sure there's no problem with the rifling, make sure the bore's not shot out or something like that to see the condition of it. But one of the commenters had this to say. WTF is this? Disassemble the rifle if you need to check the barrel or rifling. Now, immediately a bunch of people started roasting him in the comments, gun people who actually know what they're talking about, and it was pretty hilarious. So one person said, how do you propose disassembling an SKS in such a way to be able to look down its barrel in a different way without armorer's tools and a workbench anyway? And he says, you take it to said workbench and armorer, very simple concept. Yeah, on the side of the road when a woman's about to go to a gun buyback and is pulling over on a whim and there's a bunch of people trying to buy a gun, I'm supposed to say, hey, hold that thought. Let's take this gun to a professional armorer. Let's take a few hours out of our day if we can find a person and drive all the way to them and then inspect the bore. Yeah, okay. A well-known expert gun builder, Navi of Boomhandia. This guy builds 3D printed guns all day, every day. He's an expert gun builder. And he responded, "The bolt is back and the mag is unloaded. If you're inexperienced around guns, this may look weird, but this is something every gunsmith has done. The only way you're inspecting the bore on an SKS is down the muzzle. It's not like an AR where removing the barrel is a thing." And of course, not satisfied with this, he said, "There is zero reason ever to look down the barrel of a firearm, period. Bolt, mag, firing pin or not, firearms can be disassembled. And besides, you look like a damn moron. Signed, combat vet / prior LEO." Which frankly, whenever I see combat vet / prior LEO and they're talking about their gun experience and knowledge, you usually know you're going to get some FUD nonsense. So I responded, the dude you're quote tweeting is literally an expert gun builder. And of course, people were roasting him in the comments. It was pretty hilarious. And once again, he says, "I'm just wondering if you look down every barrel or only the SKS. Even with the tedious disassembly, it's still ridiculous to look down the barrel, more so when you just purchased it." So I showed him a video of our own military and what they do, these highly trained officers. Oh my God, our own military is training people to look down the muzzle of a firearm while it's still assembled during a ceremony, and they're muzzle sweeping everybody. Look, they're pointing the rifle at members of the audience. Oh my God, the rules of gun safety out the window. So then he decides to post this comparison where he's posting someone holding a side-by-side shotgun where you can clearly remove the barrel and look from the breech side, whereas you can't do that with the SKS. So naturally, I decide to post some more pictures. So here you can see some military photos looking down the firearm, similar to what I was doing. Here's another one from the US military. I believe this is the Marine Corps, looking at the muzzle end of an M1 Garand. And we've got more pictures here. Here we have our very own President Harry Truman, who also served in the armed forces, pretty high rank as well, looking down the muzzle end of an M1 Garand. So of course he says, "What instructor is telling you to look down a barrel while it's assembled, old or not? Post their names, please." And we actually had a viewer from Canada talking about how here's a couple pages from the gun safety course manual. This course is required before one can possess or acquire a gun in Canada. It teaches more than just safe practices. It informs us of our legal responsibilities. Note the section, "Prove it safe." So they teach you the basic rules of gun safety, and we look at the next page. Point the firearm in the safest available direction. Remove all ammunition. Observe the chamber. Verify the feeding path. Examine the bore for obstructions visually or with a rod. And if you think visually just means, oh, from the chamber end, the breech end, and not the muzzle end, here's the actual video they show people in Canada. This is the actual government safety course video that they show people.
Observe that the chambers are empty. Verify that the feeding path is clear. Examine the bore.
Yeah. Dude just pointed a gun at his face. Oh my God, rules of gun safety. Never, there's never a reason to point a barrel or a gun or a muzzle in your face or in whatever. This is literally taught in Canada before you can buy a gun. This is how you're supposed to do it. Now, when it was all said and done, there were about 4 other guys on the side of the road buying guns. And there was also me, and there was also Mr. Texas Oil and Gas, Tom Slocum. All of us bought guns, except for Tom. And yeah, I got something too. I got this right here. This is what I presume to be a Model 36 Smith & Wesson in 38 Special, also known as the Chiefs Special. The man who sold it was a lovely old gentleman. I noticed he had veterans plates on his vehicle. I thanked him for his service. I was not the person who originally bought the firearm off of him. I did speak to him, went over things, but it was one of the other guys who bought it. And then ultimately, after having a talk with him, I mean, he already bought a lot of things, and he was a really nice guy. And he was like, you know what, you can have it for the price, which was $200. So I did pay about $200 to acquire this, and that was very kind of him. So we all got something except for Tom. And I want to say, out of the 800 or so guns that were collected by the police that day, we prevented probably around, I want to say maybe like 20 guns or so from being destroyed. So that's pretty cool. And I do think the next time one of these buybacks happen, we're going to be better prepared. We're going to have better signs. We're probably going to have more people, which unfortunately is going to be more competition for me. And who knows, maybe even potential legal protection by these different organizations that might send letters to the sheriff's department or the police department. We'll see. I don't know. I'll still have to talk to them, but I think there's some promise. Hopefully they won't prevent us from actually attending the next one, them trying to pull these tricks at the park saying we'll criminally trespass you. Again, I have spoken with some counsel. We'll see where that goes. And yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Social media links are in the description box below, as well as merch. Support us at nuancebro.com/join, and I'll see you next time, bro.